Well, thank you everybody for showing up tonight in your busy schedules. My name is Diana Londoño. I'm a urologist in Los Angeles. I'm also the founder of physiciancoachsupport.com, which is a platform that hosts monthly meetings with different physicians that come to really share their stories, what they're doing, tools, ideas, things that can help us really, either if we're in burnout, if we're trying to get out of burnout, or even if we're not near it, but just really how to just live a better and healthier and just more fulfilling or joyful life. So again, I try to bring different themes, different tools every month. And this month, I'm really excited because we've already been doing this for 2 years, and this is kind of like the first one of the second, going into the third year. And I really wanted to bring a different theme, and this is going to be playing a little bit on advocacy, but also on a lot of different themes, and which I think are very important to discuss, just because we know of the state of things in medicine, what's going on, whether we're unhappy with it, whether it's burnout or not, what can we do? Because we all have a voice, we all have something we can do. So I want to introduce Dr. Todd R. Otten. He is a board certified family physician. He is the co-founder of our Quadruple A movement, and he is a co-author of the book, which we'll talk about today, Ripple of Change. So if you haven't gotten your copy, get it, because it's a great book that really, really makes you just feel the humanity and feel, just so many things in this book that are so important. And he really co-authored this book, as he'll talk to us about why he did it, and what has led after doing it and during really his journey, through medicine, also being a naval flight surgeon, which he'll explain what that is for those that are not familiar with the terms. And really now, again, he is just really trying to, really promote this coming together, all of us, not just physicians, but like patients and everybody really getting skin in the game to really create that positive change, that ripple of change, that can really, make this better for all of us because we're all patients. He is really active in an organization we'll also touch upon called Medicine Forward. Which, if you don't know about it, we'll talk about it. You can join it. And again, this is trying to bring people together with different voices to, again, create that positive change. So I'm excited because there's so much, about him that we can really go on for hours. And he's been on many podcasts and really been on the podcast train, really sharing his light, sharing his story in so many different aspects of so many people. So, Dr. An, thank you for being here on your time. And I know, again, you've been on many podcasts and you really have been sharing so much of what you've done to really create that positive change. So thank you for being here.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I was very excited for this event. It's wonderful to have the opportunity to speak about positivity and moving forward and making changes and not just dwelling on the negativity. It's important to understand that capacity and that part of things. But gosh, is it a lot more fun to talk about positive stuff and laugh and smile and joke too. So hopefully we'll get some of that in there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, your book is filled with a lot of that. It actually is filled with great jokes from your patients, which I know you've saved and you included on there. And I think laughter is a great part of, healing and medicine and just that joy of, being lighthearted. At the end of the day, life doesn't have to be so hard and so difficult. And maybe because I'm a urologist, I always throw some some jokes there too. But it's just because, we don't have to make things so difficult. So I do love that about your book. Um, and your book is filled with many quotes, and maybe I'll start with one of the first ones that you bring up, and I think it'll sort of tie into what we're going to talk about today. And there's many that I like, and so it's hard to choose, but one of them is from Steve Jobs, and he says, "The people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones that do." And, I think that says so much because I feel many physicians or not physicians feel like, what can we do? What can one person do? So I'd like to start with that, with people that maybe have said that to you before, or definitely have said it to me, like what can one person do when we feel overwhelmed, overburdened with all the changes in medicine?
Absolutely. You know, and you're right. There is a huge component of learned helplessness that we've got going on right now, where whether we're talking about physicians, other clinicians, administrators, patients, they feel so beaten down that they've kind of given up on wanting to do things. And that's unfortunate because the power of one can be incredible. And then you talk about the power of one plus one, or maybe even a multiplying effect to it. And all of a sudden, you can see some real positivity occurring. In the book, and we may touch about this, one of the examples I give was my most recent office that I worked in. I was committed to at the quadruple aim, or as we call it, our quadruple aim. And I told my office manager, I said, look, culture is going to be important here. We are gonna, we're gonna do what we have to do to keep this office well. And it was magic. It was magical. I mean, humor was there daily, and not in a sophomore kind of way, but in a fun, jovial, respectful way. Um, and oh my gosh, did we have a good time? And you know what? The retention was super high. We didn't lose like any staff, and patients wanted to be there. It was like busting at the seams. Even though, and you'll appreciate this, even though we only had 6 exam rooms for 4 providers,
That's
that is a bottleneck in and of itself, right? So, despite that, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, maybe we'll go back and backtrack a little bit for those that haven't read your book, and for those that are not familiar with the quadruple aim or our quadruple aim, like you mentioned. Can you go into that more? Because I know it comes from the triple aim, and again, I was not familiar with these terms prior to this. So maybe can you explain that a little more for those that have not, are not as familiar with it?
Sure, absolutely. So in 2006/2007, IHI, the Institute for Healthcare Improvement, came up with the triple aim. And I had a tendency to simplify the verbiage just because I wanted it to be easy to remember and people could grasp it and kind of go forward with it. So the 3 components, and I'm paraphrasing a little bit here, so bear with me: patient experience, quality care, and lower costs. And a big part of that was population health. And I think the reality is, in its simplest basic form, it makes perfect sense, right? Who doesn't want patients to have a good experience? Who doesn't want quality care at a reasonable or lower cost, right? The problem is you would get fits and starts with this, and I think unfortunately it led to even an increasing amount of clerical burdens and just more things for all of us to do. Um, and so over time, it was in 2014, Dr. Sinsky and Dr. Bodenheimer came up and presented the quadruple aim, adding in that 4th component. And in the context of this discussion, I would say physician wellness, because the majority of the people on the call are physicians. For those of you who read the book, I possibly chose a different word, but what we did with our quadruple aim, we presented it that, it's for anybody to take it and run with it. Use it as a framework, use it as a guidepost, use it as a lens to, when you're making decisions, say, well, how does this affect the patient experience? How does this affect the quality of care, the cost, and also the clinician or the administrator's well-being, or the person's well-being, however you want to term it. When all 4 of those things are considered, it is amazing, and I've seen it in the office, I've seen it in my personal life, I've seen it in the walls beyond, healthcare, I've seen it at a critical access rural hospital, and even at the, ACO level for accountable care organization, for those that wanna be aware. So that's kind of a mini history of how we went from the triple to the quadruple to our quadruple, which really has a lot of parallels with the quintuple aim, which involves health equity as well.
Got it. So, I mean, I think it's interesting to say that, it doesn't just have to be in medicine and you can apply it to any sphere and really life, like you said, even personal. How do you feel like, if you are, let's say, an employed physician, you're not private practice, if you're an employed physician and maybe you're not at the leadership level or the one, let's say, quote unquote, making some decisions, maybe you're a new attending. How do you think you can sort of apply that in your everyday life to, again, make that sort of magical experience that you described earlier when you were, at your last job and you were, you kind of had some leadership there, you were part of, growing the practice. How do you think early physicians could apply this, or anybody really, I guess?
Yeah, I think the fourth component for physician well-being, if you will, is you have to remember that if you're not at your best or far from your best, you are not giving your patients your best, and your staff is feeling the negative effects of it. It's this huge negative ripple effect that we don't want, right? We don't want that negativity spreading out like that. And so I think setting boundaries, having balance, mindfulness, humor. We talk about all sorts of ideas in the book, and those are really just a few. The other thing too is the power of no. I think physicians need to realize they have a lot of power, probably a lot more than they realize. Last I checked, we're 100,000 or 120 some odd thousand physicians short of what we really need for this country, and that number is not getting better. It's getting worse. So the reality is, people have this fear, this financial fear, the golden handcuff fear, which I totally understand. However, there are opportunities everywhere. And the other thing too that I really wasn't fully aware of, I would say, until perhaps the last 6 months, is how many of our colleagues are out there to help, whether it's
Mhm.
with coaching, or perhaps a website to find a counselor, or just to vent for a little bit, for goodness sakes, or even maybe you just need some positivity, like go on LinkedIn and connect with one of us. You're going to see hearts, and I usually occasionally some rainbows, and I guess I don't do flowers a lot, but smiles and jokes, and those things are just important as understanding the problems that exist. So there was a whole bunch of stuff, I suppose. So I guess pick and choose what might work for you individually.
No, I think it's important because I think, it's so easy to just not think of that fourth component, the wellness. But, like you said, if we're not well, we cannot give from that empty cup. And we have been sort of socialized, taught just to like, that's just like, maybe something on the side. But it's so key because when we are exhibiting burnout, we are angry, we're reactive, we're making mistakes, we're not focused, and we really can't take care of the problems, like computing the decisions, knowing what to do, making sure you don't forget to put an order, put the medications, all that, because we're like in chronic stress. And it really is so important. And I think many times it takes, like a sentinel event in your health, a sentinel event in your relationship, or just almost crashing and burning to really like wake up or realize, like, is this where, I want to be? And for many of us, myself included, like I had to go through that burnout, physical manifestations to really say, yeah, this is not what I want. But hopefully people can kind of see it ahead of time before, they get there to really, decide, like I'm important. I need to take care of myself and take those steps, for their wellness. I wonder, maybe you want to share, because I think for everybody's different. And I think sometimes it's important to see or realize how burnout can manifest, in the person. If maybe you can share how you felt, how you realized it, if you did, or somebody else pointed it out for you. How was it for you when you were going through that?
Yeah, I every time I talk about this, I almost get emotional because um it was painful.
Mhm.
And it was I one of the quotes in the book is from my son Daniel. I think he was 10 or 11 at the time when I asked him, because I had asked a handful of people about the burnout and how it affected them, not how it affected me, but how it affected them. And he said, I remember you were just angry and frustrated with work. And it got to the point, and maybe it's worth telling a little bit, how this built up. At the time, I was quote unquote trying to save the world. I had like every leadership hat you could think of at a critical access hospital. I don't need to list those off, but at the same time, I was also seeing about 6,000 visits a year. And for a family physician, that is a lot. Um, and, it worked until it didn't. But as it was building, there were so many warning signs: short tempered, angry, not sleeping well, not feeling rested, frustrated. And then there was a pivotal moment when I had some of my pay withheld, and it wasn't a lot of money really, but it was because I had literally had two open charts
Mhm.
that an MA literally had to check the boxes for them to get closed, and I lost it. I resigned like every leadership position under the sun. I was this close to quitting. it was just, I remember sitting out in the backyard, and I love seeing patients. I always have. I remember sitting out in the backyard just crying because I thought I was going to leave the job that I had loved for so long. Um, and I didn't know what to do. And I was the one in the position to be leading people. So, I was looking out for everybody else, but I should have been looking out for myself more. And so those are some of the emotions. And really the sad part of it was, fortunately I had some time off, but when I came back from that 3-month window, I was broken. I was not the same person. I wasn't the same confident, physician who loved seeing his patients. I was like a walking zombie for a long time. Um, Probably took a good 2 years to really kind of get some semblance of normalcy, if you will. And even now, you can see me like holding back tears just talking about this. And this was 4 years ago at this point. Um, so hopefully that gives you some insight. But I think, and that was a big driver for the book, because that and some suicides that I was associated with my colleagues, um, and watching my patients get frustrated, those are my whys. I
Mhm.
don't want to see our colleagues going through these crazy things that really, if things were done better, don't need to be happening. Um, so yeah, so that gives a little bit of insight. It gives a bit to my why, and as I jokingly say, I'm not going to shut up. My
That's
life's an open book, so I'm just going to keep saying it.
We don't want you to, because you have, like I said, so much heart and so much just compassion for others. It's so palpable in your book. It really is. I mean, you can feel it. Like got a little knot in my throat reading some of the ways you describe your interaction with patients that I think many people otherwise would have sort of missed, but you really pick up on the nuances of just the humanity of the situation. And I just think that, that is so important. And I think it's so important just, to share that, when we start noticing those flags as we go along, the anger, the resentment, the fighting, all that is, sort of nervous system just sort of ramping up. And if we sort of believe in that polyvagal theory, it's just our nervous system, really going up there, going up there. And even when we do stop, I think it's so important to sort of say that, like, it's not like rainbows and butterflies right away and you go into bliss. It really will take time after you
Mhm.
stop to sort of, like, let's say, thaw, that nervous system, and then go into a reset and really, sort of start building it back up to a level where you're not always, go, 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 because it's so chronic. And the other thing I would say is the why, the purpose that you mentioned. I think that is really important, whether now, whether you're in burnout, you're not, whatever you are in life, sort of spending that time to think about your why, your purpose. Like, is it your family? Is it how you want to act with your family because it will affect them or not? You know, that purpose, that service, is what really gets you through those tough times. So I think it is so important that you brought up the why, because when we forget that, when we lose track of that, it's easy to feel lost and feel, like you said, like a zombie. Like, why am I here? Like, what am I supposed to do now?
Absolutely. I think it's critical. And, as I said, I cherish seeing patients. And frankly, it was interesting because if some additional poor administrative decisions weren't made, I probably would still be seeing patients part-time.
Mhm.
Um, but another just frankly ridiculous decision over money was made, and I drew a line in the sand. And I'm like, I'm writing this book. I feel like God is speaking to me. He's guiding my hand here, and there's a reason all this is happening. And so now I my wife just to talk to a friend that we hadn't seen in a while, and he said, "Oh, hey, so how's Todd doing?" So on and so forth. And she's like, "He's retired." And he's like, "What?" And I'm probably not really retired, but semi-retired, maybe, I suppose. But the networking and the advocacy stuff and speaking up for other people and trying to connect those dots, it is so important and so desperately needed to try and move the needle in medicine back to where it should be, with a human-centered approach, valuing the doctor-patient relationship. It shouldn't all be around money.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I want to touch on that because I know, I mean, you really have been and are really like, I mean, I look at you as a big advocate with big heart, like a really heart-centered advocate. And we'll talk about the organization that you're, a big part of called Medicine Forward. And actually, I've heard about it, for some time already because it's been around. And I think Gabe and I were at a same symposium at UCLA last year. And I had heard about it, but it really wasn't until I think you just kind of direct messaged me, or not direct message, but messaged me on LinkedIn, like, join it. And I'm like, yeah, why not? And I really just looked into it and decided to join. But kind of tell us more about it and why this is one important component of, again, your speaking and your advocacy and the connecting the dots. Tell us more about it, because I think it could be very helpful for people that are listening. What can we do? Because again, sometimes we don't know what we can. Yes, we could perhaps use in our personal lives or work lives a quadruple aim. That's one thing we could use to sort of get us a better place. But if you're sort of lost and don't know where else to do, where to go, could this be something that they can join?
Absolutely. So, um, Medicine Forward's been around for roughly 4 years, and Gabe Charbonneau was one of the original co-founders, along with Eric Topol and a few others. And they had some town halls, and they had some traction over time. They did some work with prior authorizations. They've done some work with medical students, residency training, some additional advocacy type things that I wasn't necessarily involved in, so I don't want to overstep my bounds per se. But I got connected with it, ironically enough, by a physician leader from the system that I used to work for, which how ironic is that? Um, and so, as I was getting closer to being done with the book and thinking about ways to potentially promote the book and connectivity and networking and all these things, you don't learn that in medical school, right? Like, or at least I didn't. There wasn't a networking class. So, like, all this is like learning on the fly, and I'm like, you wrote the book, great, that's one part, but now you got to get it out there, right? And so I started checking into some of these organizations, and I was really intrigued with Medicine Forward, um, in part because part of their mission is to really focus on the physician-patient relationship, which obviously is a big component of the book, right? But also amplifying the voice, speaking up for others, and trying to, again, move the needle back to where it should be in terms of delivering care. And so I reached out to the group, in my usual fashion. I tend to just aim for the top and see what happens. And so I messaged Gabe, and I said, "Hey, I'm writing this book, and I don't know if you have any interest, and maybe we could chat." And Gabe he was doing a lot of stuff, and I give him a lot of credit for saying, "Hey, I don't know if I have a lot of time right now." And I was like, "Okay, I get it. Let's circle back. Maybe when the book comes out, you can have a chance, and maybe we can connect or whatever else." I joined anyways and said, "I'll see where this goes." Um, so fast forward a little bit, he reads the book. We start having some conversations, and the next thing you know, we've become really good friends, um, to the point where I flew out to New York specifically to do an interview with him for a night. I flew out Wednesday morning and then flew back Thursday because I wanted to do the interview. I wanted to meet Gabe in person, and then I wanted to at least attend a little bit of this burnout symposium. I know I'm digressing a little bit with Medicine Forward here, but I think it speaks to, like, the power of what can happen when you take that calculated risk and reach out and see what's available. So currently with Medicine Forward, we're in of what we would call maybe a strategic pause, where we're talking about where are we going to take this next year? How are we going to use our voices? How are we going to amplify them? How can we get the most value for our colleagues to start to get things in a better place? So that's really where 2024 is going to go. But in the interim, we have a social network on the Mighty Networks, where you can ask questions, you can get pointed to your colleagues. It's got some similarities to LinkedIn, I would say. There's definitely some differences as well. Not as much commercial, probably more high yield type stuff. There's no ads, that kind of thing. But in the end, it's a group of physicians and some other key change agents who, none of us are getting paid. It's all out of pure altruism, who want things better. So even if you just want a sounding board or somebody to talk to, it is a great place to go. And then I guess the final thing I would say with that is as we say in the book, everybody can do something,
Mm.
whether it's using your time, whether it's using your talent, or as I say, whether it's, with treasure. And that could even be a donation to an organization like Medicine Forward or another organization that's advocating for the right things. So there's lots of ways to participate and or contribute.
Yeah, and just to clarify, I mean, this is not only for physicians, non-physicians are also part of this, right?
That is an interesting question, and if you asked 100 physicians, as with any other question, you probably would get 99 different answers. So initially, it was physicians only, or attempting to be physician only, but really, at least 2 or 3 or 4 of our key or core members, Kim Downey's one, Denise Wiseman's one, Lisa Scardini is another. Those are all non-physicians. And so the group is growing beyond just that physician pool. And frankly, I think it needs to, because what percentage of us are struggling or burned out or what have you, we need help. Healthcare is a team game. And the
Yeah.
more people we have on the right team advocating for the right things, the better chance we have to move the needle. So to answer your question, it is a blend of predominantly physicians. There's a smaller percentage rather of non-physicians, but I have a feeling those percentages are going to adjust even more over time.
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes to what you say in your book, even though, it's different than Medicine Forward, but, you know, this conversation is really for everybody. I mean, it's like everybody has some role to take, as a patient, as a physician, as a nurse. We all have a way to, be advocates, to say this is not working. We want something different. We want something better. We're going to say no to this or that because again, if a nurse, if a physician is not well, nobody's well. We don't get that good care as patients when people are not doing well. So I think everybody has that skin in the game. And I think it's actually really lovely to involve other people that perhaps even may have more time if they're not full-time physicians to really like be great advocates. That some of the people you mentioned are great advocates that really amplify and join and bring together, physicians and their voices. And so I think it's wonderful to bring all those things. And also you touch upon the getting help. Not only if you're not doing well per se, but like if you want to, grow movement, if you want to, your book, you want to amplify the book, your business, whatever. It's like that ask, if you don't ask, you don't get, so the worst thing that can happen is somebody says, no, I don't have time now, or I'm not interested. But the other best thing that could happen is like, it could work. It could lead to a wonderful friendship, like it did with Gabe, or connections, or a trip, or, all these things that can come out of just asking and kind of putting yourself out there that say, I would like support, or I need help with this, or can you help me grow my business, my venture, anything like that. And I think that is so important, that connection, that relationship you can build with others. And it's actually a great way to get out of burnout, get out of apathy. One of the counter ways to get out of apathy is social connection, which we don't think about, but that is a great antidote to that. So I think that's really important. And I know you mentioned also, today and also in your book, like some of the things that got you out of those difficult times, when you took the time off, then you kind of changed things. You started working on this book. You had that purpose, but you also talk a little bit about, your faith. And I wonder if you could speak on that, because you don't mention it too much. And, if you're comfortable, maybe touching upon like the importance of faith and, could be religious or spirituality, but how important is that, when we are maybe in a dark time and want to get to a better place.
Wonderful, wonderful thought. And I probably should talk about it more. I guess I've been somewhat reserved about it historically. Um, when I went through that dark time, I it got to the point where I put the serenity prayer like right in front of me at work. I moved the stupid EMR monitor over to the side and had like the serenity prayer like right there, so I could just look up and say that. Um, but with my patients, I would tell them. It got to the point where I'd tell them I was praying for them.
Mhm.
I would start, have a blessed day. I would say amen. Um, And occasionally, I don't know if people ever thought it was really off-putting. I think most people felt it was genuine, but I think many were just receptive. And I've gotten more open about it, but it was critical to help get through those dark times. Without a doubt. And ironically, as I was getting ready for this, I said a few prayers because I get nervous as all get out for whatever reason, and then I start talking and I'm fine. So I said a couple of prayers. I was like, you know what, just help me relax and you know be myself, and I think it helped. I don't know. But yeah, it's super important, and I think when you think about the whole person, it's not just the physical part, right? I mean, there's that spiritual part, there's that emotional part, there's all these other things that intertwine. You mentioned the polyvagal component, and whatever tool you can get in your toolbox to bring things down a notch is so important when you're struggling. It is so important. And so for me, that was definitely one of the tools in the toolkit for sure.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I know it wasn't, sometimes you have some reservation, but I mean, at least for me, I'm not religious, but I'm spiritual. And when I went through my burnout, and I was in a very dark place too, and I had the whole physical manifestations of stress and the whole body, basically energetic bomb of disease from it. I mean, I really sat in bed and I really had to ask myself, like, what am I good at? Like, what am I here to do? Apart from urology, like, what can I do to serve in a greater way? How can I really be of service? And these were really things that are spiritual questions. They are, how can we use, like you mentioned earlier, your skills, your money or whatever you do to give to others, again, in a greater service. And it really was a spiritual crisis to really stand there and be like, what can I do? And it's when you give back, again, whether it's your time, your money, your skills, at anything you're good at, for the benefit and in a greater way. I mean, it really, really fills you up, and it really gets you out of that hopelessness, learned helplessness, apathy, and then you kind of are forced to, in many ways, to ask for help and connect. And again, when you do that connection, you realize, like, oh, somebody else went through it very similarly. And that's why I kind of asked, like, how it manifested or what helped, because then we all have very similar stories. And then you don't feel so alone. You don't feel so isolated. And that can really happen when we are struggling, that we just feel like we're the only ones. So I thank you for sharing that, because I think for some people that maybe haven't thought about it, for some that is a big part of their life, really grounding, anchoring, and that spirituality or that faith, really can get you out. And I've seen that in a lot of physicians I've spoken to, really anchoring on that, maybe is the only anchor they have that can really get them out. So I appreciate you sharing that.
Absolutely. And if I may, there was one other component where it was critical. When I made the decision to step away, I was so things had been building, and anyway, and we don't need to get into that, but the final decision, I went for a walk and I prayed about it, and I came home and told my wife what happened at work. Um, and she started crying, and I said, "That's it. That's a sign from God. I'm not going to put you through burnout again. I'm not going to get moved back to the town where it happened like I'm a chess piece." And I literally resigned the next morning. And of course, that led to a whole bunch of dominoes falling. But it was a big leap of faith to walk away from a good job, that I had been at for 13 years. That's not an easy decision. I didn't take it lightly, but my prayers were answered and telling me, Todd, this is what you're supposed to do. And so that's what I did.
Yeah, I think that's, again, it's so important to listen to that inner voice. And when we get quiet, at times when we just, tune out, we really can listen to that answer, which is really within us. But it's, like you said, not easy. It takes courage and that leap of faith, but understanding, like, it's something you must do, even when it doesn't make sense, even when the outside people think you would be crazy or how can you do that. But it's so important to stay true, because I think many times we try to squash that voice. We try not to pay attention. We get really busy doing a lot of things, or we get numb with substances or other things. We get numb and distracted by, and we numb it, and then that just adds more to this sort of like soul moral injury when we don't listen. And it's so important to pay attention to that voice, because it really can guide us even when it looks really scary or we don't figure out how it's going to work. But it's grounding in that, knowing that it's going to be okay. So again, thank you for sharing that about just the prayer and just listening to that voice. And I think a lot of people sometimes don't talk about that, but I think it really is key, because when we doubt something, like we don't know how it's going to play out, but when we can just ground in that, you know, faith of a greater thing for us, as long as we're rooted in love, like you're rooted in love for your wife, you made the decision and rooted in love for your kids, then it always works out. So I think when we doubt, it's important to think about, like the love, the faith. It's critical, in any venture we do, and we're all doing something. But when we feel lost, I think it's a great way to go about it. Well, I mean, I do like this other quote, which I think kind of encompasses what we've been talking about, which says, like, I alone cannot change the world, but I can cast a stone across the water to create many ripples. And again, it really beautifully encompasses your book and what you've been doing, so many podcasts and so many presentations and joining these groups, where us alone, perhaps, in our little home or in our little world, maybe we can't make a change. But when we start taking that step, or that huge step, whether it's changing something, writing something, speaking, we really can change how other people may view their situation, can change what they could do. Um, you know, Again, I kind of want to go back to, because some people just may feel like their voice doesn't matter. So, what would you say again to those people that feel like, oh, I'm just one person, and even if it's just two, like, how can you help them truly see their effect of what they can do?
Absolutely. So there, in the book, I would say between myself and Joshua, we offer, I don't know, probably hundreds of little things that you can do, to be quite honest with you. I mean, there's a lot, and you're getting it from both sides. You're not getting it just from the physician, but you're getting it from the patient as well. And he, frankly, he didn't know how much I struggled at times, but going back in time, he's like, that's why that office visit sucked. It's because you were struggling so bad. Um, but there, I think it does, we're not going to move mountains all at once, right? With all the issues that we've got in our healthcare system right now. But if we start to do something, and maybe it's just being kind to
Mm.
somebody, or truly asking about how they're doing, or being respectful, or opening the door for a colleague, or I mean, those are simple things that might have far-reaching effects. Um, but if millions of people do something, we are going to start to see some change. If millions of people do nothing, nothing will happen. And so that's what we did with the book, and it was quite an evolution of what I was trying to accomplish initially. I think when Joshua got involved, it became much more powerful, in terms of what we were trying to accomplish. I know I don't have all the answers, and if anybody tells you they have one singular answer for the mess that we're in, frankly, I think they're probably being a little foolish saying that. But I think the reality is we all can do something to, and maybe it's to make our day better, but maybe it's to make somebody else's day better.
Yeah,
Um,
I
and I
think that's
can't, yeah,
great.
yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I think just a small act of being kind, or taking a phone call, or not yelling at people, just when that happens, when you experience that kindness from somebody, I mean, like, you really feel it. And then you go over there and like, sometimes I'm like, oh my god, they were so kind. Like, I mean, I feel like butterflies and all, like, so happy inside. And then it's like you really do pay it forward to the next person. And we really can do that for others, to your nurse, to say I appreciate you, or like, I know it's been a rough day and you had like a lot of patients today, and you're still calling my other patients, and I appreciate you. I know, like, your work is not unnoticed. Um, and really just saying those things to others, can really be so uplifting when they're having a hard day. You may not notice it. Like, I don't know their stressors, but I can say I do appreciate all you do, because many of the jobs may seem unappreciated, but they're key, or like the front staff. they get yelled at. People call them with this complaint or that complaint, or you have to wear a mask. They don't want to wear a mask. They're yelling at them, and they go through a lot of things. And again, just saying that appreciate you can be quite powerful. So I do appreciate that, just the simple act of kindness.
Well, and let me give you another example that was really quite simple for myself, I suppose. Having been on LinkedIn for about 5 or 6 months now, you start to get things pinged towards you or tagged. And one recent event was some of the prior authorization legislation that's being worked on in New Jersey. And I don't know all the intimate details. All I know is that I had some colleagues that I trust and some colleagues that I respected say, hey, there's this issue going on in New Jersey. They need people in New Jersey to write letters to their senator or their congressperson or what have you. I said, well, I can send a message out regarding this, and create some noise. And surely it wasn't related to, what I had done. But if I got 1 or 2 letters written as a result of my posts and text to some of my friends who live there, that makes a difference. And if there is reform with prior authorization in that state as a result of this, then that didn't help just a couple people. That's going to help a lot of people. And that is it took me maybe 5 minutes to do that. So that's just another singular example of a very simple act that in the end might have far-reaching effects. Who knows? We'll see.
And I thought you had thousands last time I heard of people writing letters. I think
Oh
I
yeah,
thought,
yeah. They went from like 300 on a Saturday to I think either Tuesday or Wednesday the following week. 200 on the Saturday to like 5,000 letters being written in a matter of 3 or 4 days. And I think the threshold was something like 300 that they needed. So, that's the power of 1 + 1 = 20.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that's so powerful on LinkedIn or in any network, but especially I see that in LinkedIn. And, for example, whatever followers I have or don't, like if I have any followers, I want to use that to help other people or amplify other people. It's not all about me and what I'm doing or anything about me. It's like, no, check out this person. Like, look what they're doing. Maybe you're not aware of it. Look at this author, like we have here, Dr. Grace Torres. Look at her book and private practice, or how can we help her with her ventures to help other people. And when we help each other, I think that that's key of something we can do. Oh, there it is. Yeah, it's a great book. I have that one too. So, these are great tools that we can use. Again, they're tools. We can berate and be unkind to each other in comments, or we can say, hey, I have a platform. However, people are here, followers or not, have you seen this? Are you interested in this? Can you share that with somebody else and maybe help somebody else that is trying to start their direct, private practice or whatever? So again, those are small things, like you said, but can be so powerful. And I'm glad that you brought that up of like the power of a post, a reshare, a tweet, whatever it is. So use the tools we have, in a positive way. And again, we can't underestimate the power of the positivity from it.
Yeah. Well, and, people are much more receptive to, I shouldn't say everybody, the majority of people are going to be much more receptive to a positive message as opposed to the negativity that we're constantly bombarded with. And I think in my opinion, to get additional traction with some of these endeavors, it's going to require us to be on that side of the fence a little bit more. I think, we're aware of all the problems. We need to motivate, galvanize, amplify the voices of all these individuals to want to do something. If they're in that phase of learned helplessness where they don't feel like they can make a difference, they're probably not going to try. And that's the last thing we need. We need a lot of voices.
Absolutely. Well, how can people find you if this stuff resonates, if they want to learn more about all the work you're doing, or have you on their show, their podcast? How can they get a hold of you? What's the best way? Is it your website with your book? Is it LinkedIn? What's the best way for you?
Yeah, there's a couple ways. I think if you're wanting to truly get a hold of me, probably the platform I'm most active on is LinkedIn. I do have a Facebook account and also a Twitter account, which I get notifications, but I'm not as active on those platforms. All those connections are available on our website, ourquadrupleaim.com. And then you can get books there as well. Yeah, and so we got a sale going on books, and I joked to everybody, buy some for your C-suite, put them as stocking stuffers. I'd be happy to mail them anonymously for you. They wouldn't even know who it's from.
That is a great gift. That is the gift that keeps on giving. The more people that are aware, the more people can really just start that positive change. And I appreciate Dr. Torres comment here saying, I'm so appreciative of how Diane and Todd are always supporting others, including me. And that's just such a kind thing to say. I mean, I think that's, what I really am. I really truly believe in. I don't believe in scarcity. I believe when we all rise, when we all succeed, we have to lift each other up. And that's really the way to go. And I really, really, that's a core belief for me. So I'm happy to do it because, when everybody succeeds, we all really, really gain something from that anyway. It could be probably a little selfish, we all really benefit. So reach out to Dr. Otten. He is just a lovely, fantastic human being, and I'm just so glad to know him virtually, but have read his book. I really was really touched and moved by it, and I learned a lot, and I learned to also be flexible and learn to let go of our line on the sand of things and ideas and just be open. And we can be passionate, and that's important, but we also have to have love and compassion and flexibility as well. And I think that was a great lesson, and I do appreciate that. And that comes from the word provider. That's what I'm referring to. But I really do. It comes full circle because there's a quote in Dr. Book about it.
It's
But
it's so. Well, should I show my little placard? Would that be
oh
okay?
yeah, please do. I did send you that as a
Yeah.
gift. Do.
Yes, I got a gift. And I would echo that sentiment actually. And I learned from these interactions too. None of us are perfect. We're all human beings.
Absolutely.
And for those that are really trying to help one another, uh, I think we have to stretch. We have to be flexible. We have to push what are our comfortable boundaries and say, you know what, maybe I can not die on this hill or die on that hill, but let's go fight a different battle together, hand in hand and make things better for those around us.
Yeah, and I think it's like you can't also miss what is it, the forest from the trees. It's important to have a common goal, but don't get so
Mhm.
stuck on things, which are important. Like I'm very passionate. I've written a lot about it, and there's a reason, and your reason, my reason are different. The reason why I really love it is because yours is rooted in love as well. Like the reason why you use that, it's rooted in actually love. Different way that I see it. And
Yeah.
again, we don't have to agree on everything, but our core message, our values of like again love and unity are so important. And so I think that's what's really important for me. So and thank you, and Alyssa Cross says thank you for this compassionate discussion, and I appreciate those comments. So anyway, there'll be a replay. Reach out to Dr. Otten if you are a physician and want to share with somebody else or need some support. There's physiciancoachsupport.com, free and confidential, anytime, 7 days a week via Zoom. Physicians are life coaches, certified. You can talk about anything, feeling overwhelmed, feeling like an imposter because you have complications and they're piling up and you just feel like, oh my gosh, it happens to all of us. So, that or family thing or a decision you have to make and you don't know what to do, or, you just feel overwhelmed, and that's okay. That's a feeling. Or you feel angry, or you just, again, don't know where else to turn. This could be a great place where you can talk, again, confidentially to a physician, and we're there for you. We're there because we care, we believe in hope and service, and to pay it forward to all of our colleagues. So share it. Next month, there'll be another physician meeting. You can always join, watch the replay. And thank you again for your attendance today. And we look forward to the next one.